All right, well, if you watch MiWeek enough, you know about the relationship that Nolan, Stephen, and I have. But especially Nolan and Stephen, they disagree a lot, but they're actually very good friends. So in this world of, if you don't agree with me, you're wrong and crazy and I hate you, Nolan and Stephen were on WDET Public Radio this fall to explore how their upbringing shaped their political and their philosophical views and their unlikely friendship. Take a look.
You and I are able to have this conversation. We're not punching each other.
No.
We're not going to go and smear each other on Facebook tonight or on Twitter, call each other names when we appear on television or radio together. We might disagree bitterly, right?
Oh,
I mean,
vehemently,
it never
yeah.
means that we don't get
fun
into
a
it.
little bit.
Yeah, right. I mean, we get after each other.
We like scrapping.
But it's never it's never driven by a disrespect,
No, or a hatred,
or a hatred, and that's a rare space right
But think
now,
about
and it's
it.
rarer even given our positions, right? I mean, our papers are supposed to hate each other. We're supposed to be
Well,
on the other, want the other's demise.
We're competitive, and I think you and
Yeah.
I are competitive,
Yeah.
and the papers are, and they should be. But I would attribute it to, I think both of us feel the same way. I want to read and listen to things I don't learn a thing from people who think exactly like me.
Right.
And the one thing I'm worried about today, where people sort of group and cluster with like-minded folks.
And that's what I think is really interesting about this larger discussion. Now, what was this project a part of? Were you guys sitting down and having this conversation?
It was part of the National StoryCorps project. They were in Detroit for the month of June, I think it was, at the DIA, and someone called and asked me if I wanted to go tell a story with someone. I said, sure, I'll go and
You
bring
picked
Nolan
him,
with
huh?
me. I did.
I think it's really interesting because it brings up the point that we don't even get to know, I think, the people who are speaking, that we're speaking with a lot of times. We don't know their background. We don't understand why they have formed the opinions that they have formed. It feels like that we shut down so much that we only like to hear people that agree with us. And it's getting worse and worse. And both of you mentioned that.
Well, that's a good starting point for any conversation before you start talking about politics, is trying to figure out where the person's coming from, because we automatically assume, as we said there, you don't think like me, well, you're evil, you're stupid, you want to ruin the country, And we had a pretty long conversation during that taping about how our backgrounds shaped our views and how, what's behind our political philosophies, and it's not something we just pulled out of the air. We're a product of a lot of experiences.
Yeah, I have, especially since November, taken to making one of the first questions I ask people when I'm talking to people I don't agree with is, why do you think that? Why do you think you believe the things that you believe, as opposed to just attacking the things that they say they believe and saying why I disagree? I think we've gotten away from that. We've assumed. We now assume that person thinks that because they're bad or they're evil or they want horrible things to happen, and it's not generally true. Most people want things to go well. They may not see the path there the same way.
Especially now, do you guys find that you talk to people and they say to each one of you, how are you friends with that guy? How are you friends with that guy? But what I'm asking is it's been that way, I'm sure, for a while, but is it worse now? Is there a different, oh my gosh, how can you even hang out with that guy?
There's less tolerance now, I think, for people who don't think like you, and I think that spills over into this when they see people who just really don't strike the same position on much of anything, hanging out, having a bourbon, having fun. It takes them back. It's like they saw, a unicorn or something. It's they just can't relate. And I think that's unfortunate, because the problem solving, the policy making process, it starts with people sort of stating their own beliefs and positions, but also being willing to listen to the other side.
Yeah, but compromise has become that big dirty word,
But that's the offshoot of this. If you're not willing to listen to positions you think you don't agree with, or you don't agree with, and really try to understand them, you can't compromise.
Listening is not a weakness. How do we get that point across?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I've noticed people now do when they're debating or having an argument is they're listening for the opportunity to start talking,
Jump
right?
in.
To say, well, here's why you're wrong, as opposed to actually sitting and listening to what the other person's saying and thinking about it.
The lost art of listening.